Welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Nikhil Kumar, who is the co-founder of Setu, which is a fintech API infrastructure startup that just raised about 15 million from Falcon Edge and Lightspeed Ventures. Nikhil started his career managing partnerships at Tally and Intuit, and then moved on to building developer ecosystems at Exotel and iSpirit, where he was part of the team that launched UPI. Now, UPI, as we all know, does about 1 billion plus transactions a month. And in this episode, we spoke about how it is really important for startups to not just build products, but also think about distribution to begin with. How APIs could be, one of the most effective sales strategies, and also delve into Nikhil's experience of working with financial institutions and entrepreneurs, and what lies ahead for him. So, hi Nikhil, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. How have you been?
Thank you so much, Roshan, for having me. I'm doing great. I hope all of you are doing well and safe too.
Lovely. So, the one common thread I see in your experience, right, is that you've been at the center of collaboration, bringing different types of people together, whether it's managing partners more on the go-to-market front at Tally and Intuit, or managing the developer ecosystem at Exotel and iSpirit, to now founding Setu, which is in your words, building bridges for the digital economy, right? I'm sure this can't be a coincidence that you've landed these roles specifically. So what is it that you enjoy about these roles, and what are some of the nuances in that?
A great question, and it's a great pattern that you found. So one of the reasons why I've ended up doing all of these roles, because none of these roles existed in any of these companies.
Yeah.
So they were all, so right from my first job, when I joined Tally, I was actually hired as a product engineer. So I was like, I don't want to be just locked down to a room writing code all day. I want to go out and figure out. So I think in 2011, right, back then product management was not such a big deal if you really think about it. This is when you and I finished engineering, right? So no one told you could be a PM or anything as such. You had to either write code or write code. You mostly did any other option. So
or became one of those managers, right? Project manager type.
Project manager. Broadly, if you remember, in our batch or during that time, people either went to non-engineering jobs like civil, mechanical, and so on, or people who went to in the sense non-software engineering. And in software engineering, if any of us went, we were supposed to write code, right? And there were only a few companies like Mu Sigma and others where they would say you can do data analysis and so on and so forth. So I, for one, was like, I don't want to write code. So I didn't know what product really meant. So I thought basically the other side of the world was all about sales. So I went and pitched to my, head of sales at Tally saying, sir, I don't want to write code. Can I come and work with you? Now, interestingly, what happened, I went out to, my training at Tally, and I was in Cochin, and I spent a few months at the regional office. And I realized, shit, I don't want to do the sales. So I had done all this circus from moving from, and remember, I've been hired from college. This is my first job, first month in the office. I do all this drama and I get into sales, and I go out to the field and I'm like, shit, this sucks. I don't want to be doing this. So I think that kind of probably was like this kind of a pivotal moment in shaping what the future of business development would be. Because traditionally, till that time, we've always known sales as either direct sales and indirect sales, right? And direct sales meant enterprise, people going out and selling. Indirect at that time, till that time, was mostly thought about building channels, right? So can I sell Tally through the hardware or the computer shop guy, and so on. And if you look at it, most software, whether it's Microsoft Office to many other such commodity software, was always sold through channels.
Right.
So when I traced back, and on why is Tally so successful and powerful, right? So it came down to this idea of a channel, right? And then I think a series of kind of serendipitous roles that I did in these different companies actually kind of led me to build new channels that didn't exist before for these businesses. And that pursuit of these new channels kind of landed up with APIs, right? So because in Tally, API is like yeah, there's no, you don't use the word API in Tally because there's no API for Tally. So I think the foundations of thinking about this comes from the fact that Tally had this super powerful channel, number one, and channel. And we keep talking about this. We hear this in different flavors from people, right? That product is not just about building it; it's also about distribution and so on, right? So I think the distribution part of it was basically where the channel thing came in, and I was not so focused on building the product, but I was focused on, if there is a product where 0 to 1 has happened, can I go and do 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 to scale this? So that led into this whole co-creation ecosystem. So the difference between a sales guy and, let's say, a channel guy who's building is, a sales guy is extremely selfish and will think only about his targets and his targets alone, right? And this is typically how sales incentives are derived. If you're a large enterprise salesperson, you have a target and number on your back, and you do whatever it takes to get that number. Whereas if you're in this partnerships or slash building the channel, you have to take a step back and say, how do I make my partner successful, right? The number is just the outcome, that we'll do X number of sales, X amount of revenue, but the fundamental shift in this mindset is to think about the success of someone else, right? And this is the big difference between running a regular direct sales channel versus building these co-creation channels. Is you have to inherently develop this empathy towards the person and say, how do I make this person successful? So that philosophy, and given to how the world is shaping. So I realized around 5 years ago, partnerships is going to be one of the most dominant ways of business development, irrespective of any segment, right? Whether it's software, whether it is healthcare, whatever, right? We are going to go towards more and more companies building together, right? Number one. And number two, if this is going to be powered by technology, or if this is going to be digital, I just had this simple hypothesis to say APIs are the best way to build partnerships, right? Because it really connects two applications or two softwares together. Uh, and that's how these two worlds collided for me, right? One is this, kind of learning from the old software era about the importance of channels, importance of thinking about how to build these sustainable channels. And second, also seeing through that, where is the world heading towards? Are we going to go towards more, uh, are software applications going to be more like islands, or are they going to be more like connected islands? And there the bet was that we're going to be more connected than before, right? uh, so this is how my kind of world is converged from old world software to channel selling, and putting some of those lessons to see what the future would look like. And that has kind of been my anchor in life in some sense, right? So that is why you see me kind of playing similar roles in very different contexts, different products, at different times.
Right. Nikhil, so much of what you said makes sense. And in some sense, I mean, you were truly visionary to see this well beforehand, right? So we have things like product-led growth, which is, which is come into being right now, where so much of the distribution is baked in the product itself, right? And API is being pursued as a sales strategy as such, right? Build together, sell together type of an approach. How important is it to for startups to invest in building these partnerships, and focus on the larger ecosystem at hand, whether it's on the developer side or go to market side, because as you also rightly pointed out, it can be a force multiplier, right? It can get you from 1 to 10. So how important is it for startups to do that, and how should they go about doing it?
It's a super question. I wish, many of us kind of knew this before we start out and so on. That if you really look at a startup's journey in terms of if you're a technology company, the most easiest thing that is actually in our control is actually writing or building the software, right?
Yeah.
If you really look at all the variables that's involved, the one thing that's in your control is kind of writing software, and everything else is kind of dependent on so much about the world outside, whether the software that you've written, is it a product, is there a market for it, then is there a fit, and so on. uh, so I genuinely think that I think one of the most underestimated problems of our software industry is distribution. I think this has also kind of got to do a little bit with the way we've borrowed our product concepts also from Valley, from lots of things that's happened in the US.
Hmm.
All of this thing about, product will sell itself, and, and so on and so forth.
Build it and they will come.
Right? Build it and they will come, and, all of those. But if you actually look at, if you go into in detail about some of these companies in the US and so on, all of them have worked their ass off to get
Yeah.
users or distribute their products, right? I mean, nobody sold like Salesforce did, right? Nobody
Right.
sold like Oracle, or, no one did growth hacking like Facebook did. uh, so I think the idea of building a sustainable channel for distribution is very important, because if we can crack this, I think, from a startup's point of view, today products or ideas by itself are not a moat anymore, right? We are living in a hyper connected world. So let's say tomorrow, if Stripes builds a feature in the US, right, it is going to be known to me, right? Because
Exactly.
I'm going to know that they built this feature and some X people are using it, right? Or if Freshdesk builds some features, Zendesk is going to know about it, right? So we are living in a very hyper connected world. Whatever we build or design is not going to be a moat, as in the traditional sense as we speak, right? Obviously we could argue we have better designers, blah 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 blah, but at the end of the day, if someone is able to say even replicate it, the replication can probably just be at a product or at a feature level, right? But it won't be at an impact level. And the one that differentiates this is, your distribution channel.
Yeah.
uh, so I think it is extremely important to invest in distribution channels. And more importantly, it's important to invest in distribution channels that are scalable for the type of company that you want to build, right? Now, you can't say, okay, I want to be India's largest B2B commerce company, right?
Mm.
And say, I want to be a tech company. That's not going to be there, right? You
Right.
are going to be a large operations company, large sales company,
Yeah.
including like edtech, right? You have to be a large distribution engine, and technology is going to be a supporting, play for this. Now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of us in the startup world in India have realized very late as a part of our journeys, right?
Mm.
Most
Mm.
of our tech companies today are more ops heavy than tech heavy. You see Flipkart, which kind of shaped the whole culture of, our Bangalore startup ecosystem, was a tech company, but not anymore. It's a operations company powered by good technology,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's important as a founder realize what kind of company you want to build. Now, let's say you hold this thought to say, I want to build a company, a small, an agile team, a small team, a high performance team. Then you
Mm.
have no choice but to invest in indirect channels, right, of
Right.
acquisition. Because what we keep saying about small teams is good for building a product. 20 people, 10 product, 10 engineering is lovely, right? But those 20 people can't get you to 1 million customers or whatever 100K customers. So if you want to be small and if
Hmm.
you want to serve a large base, you have really no choice but to actually invest in, invest in these alternate channels of distribution.
Right.
uh, so which is where a lot of, the new economy of, all these things like Substack, or products like
Yeah.
that, or API products, all of these kind of have come into this new model of enabling companies, to build fast. Now, once you build fast, then you need a distribution channel, whether it's
Mm.
through traditional influencer marketing, whether it's through offline channels, whether it's through developers who are building on top of you. All of these are, different strategies to kind of for the same outcome, which is how do I increase my distribution?
Right. No, and the best example for this that I've seen in recent times is, what's happened with Slack and Microsoft Teams, right?
Right.
So Microsoft Teams literally in the last, I think 2-3 years has overtaken Slack purely basis their distribution might and strength. And if you look at it, I mean, Slack painfully built this user base over the last 10 years. But at this point of time for Microsoft, I mean, any product arguably is an upsell or a cross sell, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I also want to talk about the fact that you mentioned, which is very important, that to look at tech as an enabler and not as an end product in itself, right? So you mentioned, Flipkart, for example, being an awesome operations company that is enabled by technology. And oftentimes we make this mistake of like, thinking like a tech company and so on, right? So for a startup, how important is it to uh, truly think of everything else, especially when building this ecosystem, right? Think on the ops side, think on the money side, think on every other aspect. And, particularly in your space, in fintech, for example, right? Where tech is a key enabler, no doubt. But then, I mean, you have to deal with banks, you have to deal with regulation, you have to deal with merchants, etc., etc. So how important is that?
No, I think, one of the mistakes that we do, and I remember this in my previous startup, Roshan,
Yeah.
is when we start up, right, as founders, we basically kind of box ourselves into something that we have been inspired by,
Yeah.
and say, I want to be like this, right? So
Mm.
one of the examples I clearly remember is us having this, kind of not so much love towards services companies in India, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
why as a founder would you say you don't want to start a services company, right? I mean, look at the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Infosys is the only stock that
Right.
went down and came back up, right? And has been consistently performing,
No,
right?
no. And if you look at even product companies, right? If you look at Salesforce, for example, right,
Right.
services will account for a significant percentage of their revenue as well, right? And look at the
Absolutely.
ecosystem that they've built on services alone,
Take
right?
example SAP, Oracle,
Exactly.
Workday, all of these
Exactly.
companies. In fact, fun fact is I think Tally's partners probably make more revenues through services than actually through sales, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, this used to be because I came from the Tally world and so on. I used to, we there is this thing to us as a founder that we want to build a type of company because we
Mm.
read or got influenced by so on and so forth,
Yeah.
right? So we'll say, okay, I want to build a product company. Now, the moment you say I want to build a product company, what does it really mean, right? So it means probably that I don't want to do any services angle, right? Or I don't want to do,
Or I don't want to hire a bunch of sales guys, right? And me and my engineering buddies are just going to code all day, and we're going to ship this awesome product that people are just going to like discover magically and then come and buy, right?
absolutely. So I think
The dream.
those days of, like, what do I say? I would say probably it was a little amateurish for some of us to actually think about it if we look
Mm.
back, right? And the
Mm.
reason why I see this amateurish is, we also need to realize that India's startup ecosystem is also fairly young compared to the way Valley has been, and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
on, right? The
Yeah.
reason, in 2015 we were all building some, dumbass food food apps, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
the we did leverage this opportunity to truly solve hard problems, right? We did have MLAI trip for some time, then TUS, right? Which deep tech startup have we seen, in the last 2-3 years, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the problems that we have had is we are fascinated too much by the what the world thinks on the type of company that we should build, rather than focusing on the customer problem that you want to solve.
Yeah. No, and the point that you mentioned, right, maturing ecosystem, I mean, arguably, I think we've only seen one cycle of that, right?
Exactly.
From Flipkart founding to Flipkart exit.
Exactly.
So, and, founders will kind of learn the journey through osmosis, right? Basically
Absolutely.
on what it takes to build a startup and, see the whole journey through.
Just take our own experiences, right? I'm sure you are a lot more wiser today than what you were 5 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And same goes to me, where, first was a rookie founder. And, now there are so many mistakes from that to learn on how to operate.
Yeah.
I think just, us being in this and trying, I mean, we've just been at it for just a few years, right? So and one of the things that we need to be aware about is this fact, right? That let's not box ourselves to say I want to be A and B and C type of company, but rather say, look, this is the problem that I want to solve. Now, in order to solve this problem, what are my options, right? So I keep saying this, that if having a channel or this indirect channel cannot be a feature, right? It has to be a strategy. It can't be to say I am also selling through this.
Yeah,
right?
It can't be an afterthought.
It can't be to say that, oh, suddenly I realized I don't want to scale to 100 salespeople. So now I'm going to pivot and and try to do. I mean, sure, but you actually have that ability from day one to think and design, right? So, for example, let's talk about a little bit more in our APIs itself, right? When we think about APIs as a product, right? Typically, what used to happen is, okay, you can use my product also via APIs, right? This is one way of thinking. Now, the other way of thinking is that I will give you my APIs so that you can build
only use my product on APIs.
On my
Through
APIs.
APIs, yeah.
Right. So, and that what that means is, then why will the guy even use it? He is going to use it most likely because he's going to use it and build something for his customers, right? So why will you use a Twilio API? Because you might be WhatsApp and you want to verify each one of your customers, right? So just these being clear on on what kind of company you want to build, not to box and say I want to build A type of company or B type of company, but to say that, look, I want to build a efficient organization, right, with an efficient sales channel and a sustainable channel, and then look at what are my options, right? There will be direct marketing, direct acquisitions, then you'll see indirect, and so on and so forth. And one of the secrets, to just to sum up, that startups have not really done well is, I don't know of many startups which have leveraged existing channels to grow their business, right? So I can give you one example. For example, like let's take Open Bank, for example. Open, as a neo banking company, is built on top of ICICI, right? They effectively leverage the entire sales channel of ICICI, right? And get the ICICI sales team to sell their product, right? And whenever a lead comes in, Open just fulfills that, right? So there are lots of these opportunities and channels that are available for companies to know and leverage off. And I don't think as a startup ecosystem we've really made much progress at it. I mean, it's also, like I said, we're very early, and we're learning the
Yeah.
We've learned how to sell, remotely. We've now learned how to build, large sales and ops teams. Um, so the art of selling it through third parties is probably going to be what the next decade will be about for a lot of tech companies.
At this point of time, given the number of applications that a typical enterprise uses, right? I think you don't want to go through the trouble of building one more application, right? Because I mean, there's so much of fatigue in that sense of adopting that, and then all of the other nuances to it. So, which is also, I think, why you're seeing a lot of people take that API route. And the open ICICI example that you mentioned reminded me of this. I shared that article with you as well. The Anderson Horowitz article, which said every company will be a fintech company, right?
Yeah.
Again, fantastic vision in the sense that let the bank take care of the regulation, take care of the actual business of running the bank. Tech can be that services layer over and above that, right? So yeah,
in fact, I sometimes keep pulling this, right? So we also say the same about the thesis of this. All of this thesis looks very nice when suddenly when someone in the West says this, right? But let me actually illustrate why it is true in India, right? Just a funny anecdote, right? And all of us know this truth. In India, every company lends. Every company, every B2B invoice is a lending operation, right? Have you ever seen any B2B business happen, right, where the guy pays money and takes his 5 kgs of rice and goes? It never happens, right? Every B2B invoice in India is actually an asynchronous payment process. Funny thing is in Tally, when you raise an invoice, the default credit period that comes up in the invoice is 30 days.
30 days, yeah.
You don't have to do anything. Tally only autofills it when you raise an invoice. So effectively, every business is giving 30 days of credit line to his customer, right? What is that? That is nothing but lending, no?
Correct.
Where will this fellow get money from? So in every small business in India, in some sense, is like a micro bank or a asset management company, right? Where there is capital gone here, capital gone here. So we keep joking that don't teach small businesses how to do business. Just give them the instrument and see magic happen.
Figure it out,
right? Because they know how to, nuance whether to put it in gold, whether to keep this in FD, whether to take the OD line. Boss, all of these are complex decisions, and only the SME knows what's right for him. So in some sense, if we really see that, every company in India in some sense is actually a fintech company.
Right. No, I mean, if you look
fintech, but fin company for sure.
Yeah, I mean, see, for instance, I mean, if you look at the kiranas that are operating right now, right? I mean, even with this lockdown, COVID, and everything, I'm just amazed by the kind of supply chain wisdom there is, right, in terms of understanding what exactly to stock and how to move things along and manage finances and stuff like that. So, absolutely with you on that. Let's move on to one of the chapters in your life which we cannot, I cannot not discuss, right? Which is the whole UPI, NPCI, India Stack phase with iSpirit. So you were at the ground zero of launching UPI with NPCI, and then developing the India Stack as such, right? Aadhaar, e-KYC, and bunch of others. Uh, Now, this is like I mean, probably the most ambitious project that I've ever known, right? And even with the likes of, Nandan Nilekani around, it must have felt like you were kind of reaching for the stars, right? It's an astronomical thing. So, what was that experience like?
I think when I look back, it all feels surreal because I have now been reduced to a very humble daily active user of UPI.
Right.
And every time when I use it, I'm just fascinated as I was, on day zero, day one, right? And I'm still like, shit, it's still working. And it works like a charm. So honestly, for me, this whole journey, I everywhere I talk, I usually say that it was kind of chance pay dance for me. Um, Now, particularly when I kind of go back to see, like, how intimidating it was, and how scary it was, and so on. Actually, it is exactly the opposite. People won't believe exactly the opposite happened. Uh,
Okay.
the reason was, most people did believe that this could be done, right? So I was actually in a negative perception battle, where I was like, nobody thought it would be a big deal, right? Imagine, today it seems like a big deal.
Right.
My problem in 2016 was, I had to convince people that, okay, people would say IMPS hai na, why should we do this? Money can goes in real time, isse kya hoga, right? So I think, the good part about this journey was, people always underrate the future in some sense, right?
Mm.
And or the power of some things, and overrate the past, right? And that's kind of what happened with UPI. So when I started working on it, it was really a no big deal for anyone, right? Everybody kept saying, "मेरे को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, फर्क नहीं पड़ता है," or let's look at it, देखते हैं. That kind of rejection, right? Every time, or
Mm.
soft rejection, to say, fuck, why is this person not giving bhav, right? Why are they not getting it? Kind of fueled me more and more to say, bloody, I have to make this work. uh, I remember with, I had this thing about a wallet, one of the top wallet companies, on whether they will adopt it or not, right?
Right.
I was like, I don't care. I will do whatever it takes, that I'll make them adopt it. Right? Even if it takes to get someone else to build a rival app and go to a point that they take notice and don't have a choice and do this. Right?
Right.
So in some sense, the good part for me was, because people didn't believe it was a big deal.
Mm.
I actually didn't have any much performance anxiety as such,
Mm.
issues as such, in the sense, I didn't have professional stress at me,
Mm.
because I knew that if this didn't happen, it would be buried 6 feet under, and it would just, I mean, I would probably go back to my life of sorts.
Right.
um, so when what changed this whole thing was, I was truly pained that people were not able to see value of what we were trying to do, right?
Mm.
Then the problem is more a communication or a storyteller problem, right? It's
Mm.
not about the technology. Like, you can go on and on and on about how good the APIs are, how this is, and so on. But beyond a point, I read this somewhere, that Intel actually has this role called a futurist, right?
Mm.
And that person's role is actually to see what the future is, travel around the world, and figure out what people want, and basis that, release tech products. Because in some sense, we have made so much of progress on tech that the society will not probably even be ready to accept it, right? Many of those things.
Mm.
So similarly, rather than trying to show UPI as more like a sci-fi type of, kind of a project, right? We kind of made it a lot more real. And again, thanks to demonetization. Now, if, let's say, demonetization had not happened, probably this a billion transactions a month could have taken us 2 or 3 more years to reach there.
Mm.
Um, but a mix of people not giving a shit about it and suddenly people wanting to give a shit about it kind
Yeah.
of brought these two things together. And I mean, there are lots of events that led to what it is today.
Right.
But I can tell you I mean, for real, that it was not a McKinsey strategy plan, right? It didn't happen out of it didn't happen like we made like a 2-year plan and these are the things that needs to happen and so on. We broadly had these ideas. It was a lot of small things, a lot of compounding effects that led to what has happened today. And
Right.
if that compounding things had not happened, and maybe we would not have seen this, I would definitely argue, if it was a linear exercise to say, okay, app 1, app 2, app 3, bank 1, bank 2, bank 3, we wouldn't have been here. A lot of small things, from uptimes, from policy, from regulations, a lot of these compounding things has kind of led to where we are about UPI today.
Right. And if you want to understand the greater significance of UPI, you only have to travel to the US and pick up all those pieces of change that they give you. Whether at your supermarket or whatever it is, right? And then you realize, oh my God, what an awesome country India is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about your transition from from an operator to a founder. Now, you've been a founder before, right? I think you had a startup called Voice.
Correct.
That got acquired by Exotel back in the day. But you've been a founder. You've been an operator for a while after that. What is it like to transition to being a founder now with Setu?
So, so I think the big transition is going from, I think, a founder by definition is a leader, right? And I think the biggest transition has been from being a contributor to kind of a leader role, because when you're an individual contributor, right? There are very fewer things that you need to care about, but if you're a leader, there is so much that you need to care about. And here's the reason, right? That if you are a manager, right, then life is easy, and what you do, you can set goals and for your team, and measure them against goals, and help them get there, blah blah blah, and so on. But if you're a leader, the true job is to truly grow your people. And if your people are not growing, then your company is not going to grow, right? And it's said, all of these things are said, right? You can read 1,000 books, you can read like so many founders, and blah blah blah. It's probably the most cliche thing, right? But it is true. At the end of the day, if people in your organization are not growing, then you are not going to grow as a company. So how do you make that happen? So first is for you yourself has to personally grow about this, right? Suddenly there's all this pressure. How do you hire people more smarter than you? How do you hire people, more with more experience, with more relevance, with more knowledge, right? Or how do you even inspire young folks to come and join you? So that's the first step of doing self improvement. And I think, given that we're all human beings, it's going to be a pursuit of being a leader. There is no absolute leadership that you can say, oh, today I'm a leader, right? Because situation changes every day, right? Things go bad, good, every day. So I think it's always being in this pursuit of getting better, of wanting to be, of wanting to help and grow your people, and so on.
Right.
So first is all this investment into ourselves. And personally, it's, I don't say it's been hard, but it's definitely not as easy as one expects it to be, to transition to this, right? So that's been the one part. The second part is, the joy in seeing others successful. Again, the whole thing about being a founder now is, I have to celebrate everybody's victory in the team. There is nothing called my victory anymore, right? And I think flipping that switch to say, it's about making them successful, and not about you anymore, has been kind of one of those biggest transitions from being an operator to a founder, right? So broadly, I feel a lot empowered by having a team, because as an individual operator, ultimately, I like what Taleb says, right? Like, ultimately, if you really want to change the world, fucking start a company. Right? So all of these things around policy and all of that. So one thing is for sure, one side of the world that I've lived in is that, in a country like India, Bharat Sarkar is extremely impactful. Any work that you can do with them, any small thing, it'll have enormous impact, right? Like take example of UPI. The other not so known project that I have worked on, but a project is known as also GST, right? I worked
GSTN.
APIs and so on. So even if you do a small thing and make it better, it'll have impact on so many millions of people, right? That's what government policy also does. But it's always riddled. You're always operating under those constraints, right? But when you're an entrepreneur, you're truly in an open space, in the sense, the world is your playground. You can think literally about building anything, whether you want to send a rocket to the moon, or whether you want to build a tech app or whatever it is. Now what happens is, as we go along in this journey, we start putting these constraints. So we'll bring investor will bring one framework, and and so on and so forth. So uh, I so I think the key is to be empowered as a founder to be able to change the world, right? And that empowerment involves capital, etc., etc., right? And the
Right.
non-negotiable part of this will be people. Uh, because ultimately a company is going to be built on the people, on the people that are in the company and how they are growing. So for me, this whole idea of managing so many people and their growth, right? Not just managing their tasks. If managing tasks is again something that we all know, we know how to do it. But managing growth has been the biggest kind of shift. Like, how do you constantly worry about? How do you even motivate someone to grow, right? Uh, so culture, and all of this, what shapes your culture, right? If there is no growth mindset in people, then your culture is also going to be of a no growth. So this whole managing people and their growth has been the biggest uh, shift. Now in terms of business product and all of that, uh, I think all of those parts kind of are mostly kind of similar for me, because of the kind of company that we are wanting to build. So not much on that side of change, working with the ecosystem, working with the banking side and so on as a founder, right? My and the reason is that because when Sahil and I were starting, we asked ourselves this question: hello, what do we want to do? Why do we want to start up? So I have this business plan when I shut down my last startup, where I made a business plan to start a paint shop in my hometown in Kolar, right? And my business plan says, Roshan, that you and I are in the wrong industry. Right? If we start a paint distribution shop in a decent mid-tier, two-tier town, you can probably make up to a crore and a half per year, right? As an individual business. And why are you and I doing all this? so so I decided, when Sahil and I were starting, we decided that we are not going to do this just for the sake of money. We are not going to do this for what we love doing. So which is why we first figured more on what the company would do, or what kind of company will we build. And that's where the whole idea of building a developer platform, a co-creation platform, we just looked back to our past and said, what were we doing? Let's continue to do that in a new avatar. And the only thing that has changed is, building the team part, and us realizing how important that is for anything that we do.
Right. Fantastic. So why don't you explain, to those who may not know about it already? What are you trying to do with Setu?
So with Setu, what we're trying to do is we want to make we want to design new financial products for India, right? And make these financial products available and affordable, accessible and affordable to every Indian. Today, one of the biggest challenges that we have in the country is, right, in spite of having technology, in spite of having financial institution, a large part of our population doesn't have access to all financial products, right? We can't just give them a Jandan bank account and wash our hands off and say we have done financial inclusion, right? Is this the step one of bringing someone into the formal ecosystem? So at Setu, what we're trying to do is to make these products available and accessible to all of these people. Now, how do we do this, right? So this goes back to our discussion around distribution, right? So India is a large country with 1 billion people, and we genuinely or we clearly believe that there is no way as a single company will be able to serve all of these people, right? So what we have decided as a role to do is, let us build a technology platform, right, that will enable hundreds of entrepreneurs to build financial products on top of us, right? Whether you want to call them fintech companies, whether you want to call them tech companies wanting to do financial services, or whether it is, new businesses that are built on top, right? We don't know. Why can't someone run like almost like a formal chit fund if they really want to do it, right? So our goal is to have these hundreds of entrepreneurs on top of us who can build thousands of financial products, and then they will go and reach these end customers. Now, in order to enable these hundreds of entrepreneurs, we need to give them financial products, right? So how do we get these financial products? We partner with existing financial institutions like the banks, asset management companies, and NBFCs. Work with them, design new financial products, make these financial products available as an API, right? And make this entrepreneur and the financial institution partner together and make this product available for the entrepreneurs and customers, right? So it's basically stitching together this ecosystem of entrepreneurs or innovators who want to build and serve their end customers, and financial institutions like the banks and the AMCs, which are regulated, which build manufacture financial products. Can we be the digital supply chain to connect these two? One is a distributor and the other is a manufacturer, and APIs is the digital supply chain, and that's why we are called Setu, to basically build this bridge, a digital bridge, which will enable these interactions to happen. And our hope is, the future is where there is customization and personalization of financial products to a level that, Roshan, you'll have your own banking skin and your own teams. And that's the future that we want to create. That how do we make financial services personalized to n is to 1, right, to that nth person, and not take generic products and give it to everybody. So this is our mission. We are still trying to figure out how to make this happen. We have made baby steps. We have learned a lot more. We have grown as a company from 2 founders to 35 people, and so I'm feeling more confident than ever to be able to achieve this at this time.
Awesome. Yeah. So you guys raised a round of funding very recently as well, right? To sort of enable this fantastic mission that you guys are on. So how did life change post that funding?
Well, for starters, that day when our funding was announced, the entire day got wasted. uh, but honestly, I think fundraisers have funnily positive impacts in some sense for startups. So one is obviously in recruiting, where you see where like direct impact. Um, you know, Candidates are a little bit more confident or a little bit more, kind of open to joining like, a company with a series A and so on. So we're seeing that in our hiring conversations. In fact, after COVID, by the way, we have like onboarded 4 people remotely and maybe hired 4 people
Wow.
remotely. So I mean, it's got nothing to do with the funding part, but I'm just saying that we managed to do this, and we're seeing some of those play out during our final conversations with candidates. Second, since we are in this business of so the financial institutions need to trust us to open up their infrastructure, right, for us to distribute it for somewhere else, right? So I really see banks are probably the most trusted institutions, right? Now I need to be an institution that the bank trusts, right?
Right.
And there is only so much that you can talk. Bankers only understand numbers. So having a good capital infusion and showing that okay, we are a serious company, we're going to be around for the long run, has also been very very helpful for us to crack a banking partnership, because the last thing that the bank wants to do is give you a software contract and you not existing for the next after 5 years, especially where we're building software for some of the transaction engine, right, whether it's
Right.
UPI, BBPS, and so on. So it's helped in these two ways. um, uh, but other than that, life has really not changed for us at all. Otherwise.
Nice. Okay, let's do a rapid fire round. Okay, these are one of those mandatory things that every interview format has to have.
Oh no.
Nothing scandalous, don't worry.
Done.
Just quick answers to the following questions. Okay, which startup? Again, I think I know the answer. Which startup has the best partner ecosystem in India? I know what you'll tell me.
It's Tally.
Tally, of course, right? If you were to pick one, developer partners or go-to-market partners, which one?
Right
There's an
now,
overlap, I know, but yeah, right now.
to work. Oh, so there's one partner we're working with. Super excited is Yellow Messenger.
Oh, nice, nice. Okay. Uh, so if you were to do the whole iSpirit stint again, one thing that you would do differently?
Get myself a nice desk at home.
Okay. Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs.
Product or platform?
Platform.
Kiranas or Amazon?
Kiranas any day.
Financial inclusion or millennial banking?
Oh, financial inclusion for sure.
One startup operator that you look up to and why?
Samir Nigam.
Okay.
I think
He's the
I
PhonePe.
PhonePe
Or
founder. Yes,
okay.
PhonePe founder and CEO.
Nice.
The reason is Samir is great, and as you know, I've seen PhonePe grow from being a hackathon team participate at UPI to how big they are. And I can tell you this: no founder in India has gone through the kind of stress and competition and this thing that Samir has gone through. Right? Year one launches, first 3 months of launch, biggest bank in the country comes at him. Year one, Google. Year two, Facebook. Year three,
Crazy.
Amazon.
Crazy. I mean, payments has been such a crazy competitive space, right? And for PhonePe to have, sort of survived and done well, I mean, that's a fantastic testament to the founder's grit, no doubt. Yeah. Your best quarantine hack that you've discovered?
Oh, so we actually started a daily morning quiz in the office at 10 a.m. Between 10 to 10 a.m. For the first almost 6 to 7 weeks, every day we used to have this pop quiz where Sahil or I were the quiz master. And that basically helped all of us set into a morning routine, even for me to start my day at 10 o'clock. So every day, the entire company, we would check in, do the 10-minute quiz, and get back to our work.
Nice.
So I think in more than many ways, it helped people as because the shift was so abrupt. So building that behavior of starting the day at the same time was very important.
Right.
And we found this fun quiz, pop quiz, to be the best way to engage everybody and not bore anyone.
Nice. What book are you reading right now?
Oh, so I'm reading a book I'm actually reading a couple of books. One of them is this book called The Goal. And this is about, about like theory of constraints and the process of ongoing improvement and so on.
Sounds heavy, man.
I mean, so by the way, I have a contrary opinion on like improvement, self-improvement / business books.
Uh-huh.
I actually don't read them until I need them. So I don't
Okay.
generally pick up a book and read that for general gyan,
The book
because
picks you instead.
yeah, so whenever I find myself in okay, I need to do something better, or or if I have to learn something about a concept, then I go
Mhm.
deep down into it, read blogs, then find a book, uh, and so on. So I don't generally otherwise pick up management books. So let's say
Okay.
if I have a pricing issue that I'm trying to solve, then I go into okay, let's read like monetizing innovation or something like that.
Nice. Okay. What podcasts do you listen to? What do you recommend?
Oh, podcast. So I obviously listen to a bunch of different types of podcasts. So one thing is definitely the Knowledge Project by Shane Patterson is something that
Yeah,
I
that's
definitely
amazing.
recommend. I mean, that would be my go. I mean, that would be my one must listen to everybody. Right? You
Yeah.
can listen to anything else, but that's one thing that I would recommend everybody to listen.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Uh, so, Nikhil, we're at the end of the podcast, and before we let you go, why don't you quickly tell us what you have coming up, and also leave us with some words of advice for all the startup operators who are listening.
What do we have coming up? The next few months, we're just putting our heads down. We have a product where we have a product market fit. We're doubling down and increasing distribution for that. We're working on 3 or 4 new products at the same time. All of these are parallelized tasks. So I'm excited to launch all of these beta. So we're going to launch lending API soon. As you know, the entire country is now going to be struggling in financial services. For us, this is a time where the people that we want to serve the most need us the most right now,
Mhm.
and I'm particularly, you know, at least at this role as a entrepreneur, I'm not so empowered as I would have liked to be. So we're going to do whatever that we can to help people and build products in the next few months, coming quarters. We have kind of set ourselves to be able to do this. So we're going to listen to the market, go back to the financial institution, help see if we can help them, leverage the credit guarantee scheme from the government and so on, and make this money flow happen. if not, the country is going to be in shambles. So we're going to try and do as much as possible there.
Nice.
To all my startup founder friends, I have, I just want to say that life is a long journey, and if it is not for today, live and fight another day. uh, but otherwise, everybody keep safe. I, you know this whole gyan at this time to a lot of startups and founders, right? I'll
Mhm.
tell you, what exactly is going through. What's going through a lot of founders and startups are all like, pain, misery, loneliness. Lots of personal friends of ours, right, who had to let go of people on Zoom and
Yeah.
so on. It's really, apart from strength to all of these people, I really have no other advice to give.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a pretty interesting time, and can only hope that people have the strength to kind of make it through, right? So yeah,
And
fantastic.
if not, live to fight another day.
Yeah,
Life
live to
is
fight
long.
another day. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fantastic note to end the podcast on. Thank you so much again for making the time. This was super fascinating, man. I mean, thank you for sharing all of your insights and everything.
Oh, absolutely, Roshan. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Startup Operator. Every weekend, we'll interview operators at fast-growing startups and curate insights that can help you do better. This podcast is available on all popular platforms